Om Shanti 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 Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat. So we had finished up till verse number 105. So the first two principles of these 14 steps to samadhi as per the Vedantic practice of realizing the self. For Atma Anubhuti, we had started this whole discussion. And first one, Yama is Sarvam Brahmeti Vijnanad Indiragrama Sanyamaha Yamo Ayam Iti Samprokta Vyasaniyo Muhurumuhu. So that is Yama. Yama is not what we have discussed earlier in the Yoga Sutras, Ahimsa, Satya, Asteyam, Brahmacharyam, Aparigraha, all that. And similarly, Niyama, what we have discussed there. Niyama is Saucham, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana. That is what is the steps in Yoga Sutras. And here he is saying it's very simple. You don't have to go that long way. These are all fine. The fundamental orientation of Vedanta is towards jnana, towards realization, towards chintana. So he's saying what fundamentally it requires is you need to watch your mind. Sajatya pravahasya, whatever keeps you on track towards realizing the self, towards having Brahmanubhuti, having Adhisthana Drishti, whatever is Adhyasita, whatever is superimposed on the Brahman, the whole samsara, the diversity, the dualities, the conflicts, so far they don't trouble you. And you are being able to hold your mind, your attention on that particular referent, and Bijadya Tiraskritihi. All the distractions are driven out of your consciousness. Niyomuhi Paranando, that sort of meditation, that sort of regulation of the mind. Saucham, cleaning yourself, taking a bath, having a pure mind. Within that, all this will come. Then Santosha, having this Alam Buddhi, this is fine. I don't want more, stopping cravings. Tapas, Swadhyaya, studying, Ishvara Pranidhana, all these are relevant. These are not denied by Sankara. All that he's saying is, these are all fine. These are the details. What are the essence of this Vedantic meditation or Yama, and what is the Niyama, Vedantic way? Vedantic way is constantly driving away all the distractions which make you feel as if these phenomenal world is real, and then they trap us. And having that Brahma Drishti or Adhisthana Drishti. How do we practice it? During the Bhuthana Dasa, during Samadhi Dasa, fine, you can drive away all thoughts. And so they have these 5 hours in the Buddhist tradition. That if you're sitting, they would say that, in the US, for example, they have a lot of sensors fixed in many isolated houses, even in normal houses, private houses. So if a person comes near the house, the lights go on, so that fellow becomes visible, and then there'll be cameras who can take a picture, CCTV cameras. So they keep an eye on people without having to actually watch them individually. This just naturally it happens, right? Now, just imagine that our mind becomes like that during Bhuthana Dasa. So the Buddhists say that, okay, you're sitting in meditation, don't have to fight with any countervailing ideas or emotions which are entering into you when you are sitting in meditation. You just describe it. They have a very subtle and a very simple technique. So if we are sitting in meditation, what they would say is that suddenly your daughter's education comes in your mind. This is Diwali. What gift you have to buy for your daughter? It enters your mind. So you are meditating, and suddenly you say, now I'm thinking about my daughter's Diwali gift for my daughter. I'm concerned about her health. Then you become aware that why have I decided to sit here? I have decided to sit here because I want to do meditation. But right at that moment, this thought is coming. Okay, you park it. I'll do it. I will think about it after half an hour. Not now, because this is my meditation time. Then they say that you smile and then refocus your attention on your consciousness. Just be self aware. Here, if you look at it, The Buddhist method is always focused on the consciousness itself, but we do not focus on the mental processes is the beginning and end of the whole spiritual practice. We always try to see what is the fundamental premise on which our ways of dealing with our consciousness or the processes in the brain have to be modulated, guided with. So the blueprint for us, the Google map for us, is that Vedantic ontology, the theory of what is truth, that all these are essentially phenomenal, they appear and they disappear. The foundation of all this is that pure consciousness, which is Brahman. So we constantly reconnected with that word called Atman. They don't accept it, they say Anatma, because that's basically a mental construction. The moment you accept the Nityatva of Atma, then you will not get liberation, you will have some egoism. That's their way of looking at it. But ideally, if they could understand that by Atma, we are not talking about the ego self, we are talking about that permanent substance. Because for them, everything is changeable. We say, yes, everything is changeable, but there is a substratum which doesn't change, upon which these changes appear and disappear. That is a small, subtle difference. Otherwise, we also believe in two truths, and they also have a notion called Buddha nature. Some of the people talk about alaya vijnana. So there are close parallels, and yet we have differences in the way we try to understand our own spiritual sadhana. And because we are kind of astikas, because we accept that ultimate divinity or the source of all this, it's easy for us to also lay down practices where devotion can have its own place. You have space for Ishwara Anugraha. You have to do this meditation. You are trying to connect with the divine. All these are easy here because we are still thinking about that absolute reality which is transcendent and immanent at the same time. This is something which cannot be described in words, but there is something to hang on to. So that's a subtle difference. But with this subtle difference, adhering to the reality or the truth of that ultimate principle called Atman, that is the fundamental principle which explains all 14 steps you will see. That is why he's saying Sajatya Prabhasya Vijatya Tiraskriti Niyomohi Paranando. So you are then established, and that itself gives you limitless happiness or ananda. All other ways of sticking to something only bring some bondage and some after effect and some tension and all that. Niyamat kriyate buddhehi. All the wise people, they do this, practicing this principle. Then we will go to the third principle called Tyaga. Now, because we are discussing about Tyaga, which essentially means letting go, as the Buddhists say, or foregoing or renouncing. Okay, these are some of these words. When did we have such a good discussion on Tyaga? We had it in the Bhagavad Gita. There are three kinds of Tyaga, which is Sattvika, Rajasika, and Tamasika. There's a lazy man who doesn't want to work. He is a laid back character. The Rajasika, because there is a stress, he runs away from a particular assignment. The Sattvika is kind of driven towards self knowledge and Sattvika Tyaga. Then again, we had another understanding of ways of sannyasa. One is a Nitya sannyasi who is doing his karmas, Niskamataya, Ishwara Arapana Buddhya, he continues to do his work. So Bhagavan calls him Nitya sannyasi. Therefore, he's saying you become a yogi, you don't try to run away because you may not even manage to survive. Who is going to give you alms? It's not an easy job. Sannyasa is perhaps the hardest decision to take in life because then you are entering into an uncharted territory. It looks very beautiful from a distance, but once you enter into it, you encounter a lot of challenges. It's topsy-turvy because you are kind of used to a life of certainty, a life of certain predictability. And then you're entering into a zone where nothing is certain. Then you cannot even afford a lot of things, which is very easy to manage right now. A very difficult world. Then you have to adjust to a new reality altogether. That is the formal sannyasa. Then there is vividisa sannyasa, where you do formal initiation into sannyasa. There is a vidva sannyasa when you have atmagyana, then you are foregoing everything. But if you look at the spirit of the discourse on sannyasa in different Upanishads, in the Yoga Vasishta, in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a powerful message that external saucha and purity is a good condition, not a sufficient condition for spirituality. Of course, if you are unclean, then obviously, I mean, you just don't like it. It causes certain psychological discomfort. So it's good to be, take a bath and be groomed and wear clean clothes and have a clean place to stay. That's all great. Antasaucham is more important, having purity within. Similarly, this Bahistyaga or sanskara, having that sanskara, tyaga sanskara, the purification rituals which take place when you take sannyasa diksha, these are all fine. But what is internal is far more important. And that is what is given to us in the next verse. What does he say? Tyagaha prapancharupasya chidatmatva tyago hi mahatam pujyaha sadyo mukhyamayo yataha. Tyagaha prapancharupasya. Tyaga is not renunciation of your house and a car and your relatives, your different kinds of job assignments you are doing, any kind of commitments you have made, and you run away from all that. No, that's not the best way to look at it. Can you do prapancha tyaga? Because you might leave. Bhagavan said mithyachara. Somebody, the moment he says, I am doing this sannyasa diksha, I am going away, is a contradiction in terms. You remember that old Bittle number is talking about the Marxist or the socialist, the Jholawalas. Half fiction is a walking contradiction. Half fiction, half true. Why is a walking contradiction? He takes the benefit of the market society and everything at the same time, then he wants to destroy it. Now, the sannyasi who has ego still in its own place, he is doing a egoistic sannyasa or running away from the samsara. On the one hand, he wants to take sannyasa. On the other hand, he's saying, I am taking sannyasa. Means kartritva, bhaktritva, buddhi is very much there. What have you renounced? You are getting rid of your wealth and all. Then you will crave for something else. What you are dissociating from is not important. Whether ultimately you are somebody who is free from entanglements is the main question to be meditated upon. Therefore, he's saying, Tyagaha prapancha rupasya. The foundation of all this is Brahman. Taking us drawing our attention back to the same fundamental point. Tyagaha prapancha rupasya. And how do you do that? Chidatmatva avalokanat. Chidatmatva avalokanat. Because of the ability to see whatever is karya rupa as non-different from karana rupa. Having the ability to see the samsara as emanating from and ultimately getting dissolved in that ultimate truth principle called the Brahman, called the Atman. If we are able to remember, understand, reflect on that, then we would find it much easier to let go of the samsara. It's like, just imagine that you go to some kind of a college, and there are two very attractive, elegant young people. Let's imagine one man and a woman, and suddenly they say, hello sir, how are you? And then suddenly they invite you, would like to have a cup of tea, how can we help you, how was your day, blah blah blah. Later on you realize that they were in charge of actually reaching out to the potential parents who may send their children to that expensive, and they are trying to sell the expensive courses. Why you want to admit your son to this course? Why not this one? This one is much better, and we'll put him in one of the best hostels and blah blah blah. that they do in now many private universities. From Australia, from Canada, they have a lot of counseling centers. They're changing students and changing their parents. Once you know that this girl and this young man and this young lady are actually trying to recruit your student, your son or daughter as a student, then you don't mistake their warmth as respect for you because you're somebody very respectable. You know they're doing a job. Now let's flip it. Come to our case. The sansara, which is very exciting, which poses a lot of enchanting details about how good it is that we should chase happiness in sansara. But once you know a higher truth, what is that? All these are apparent, they're going to vanish. And the Brahman and the ultimate truth, that is the only thing that's going to stick. Then you are able to experience a sense of detachment to everything which is available to you. Tyagaha prapancha rupasya, the details you lose interest in. And how do you do it? Chidatmatva avalokana, because you are steady being able to focus your mind on that ultimate truth. Then he's saying, Tyago hi mahatam pujyaha, and this sort of a renunciation is what is respected. This kind of a renunciation, not the external running away, this ultimate simple way of renouncing is what is valued, appreciated, adopted by who? Pujyaha. That is what is worshipped. By who? Mahatam. The wise people. They accept that as the ultimate truth, not running away from family. So Pujyaha Sadhyo Moksha Mayo Yataha. Why so? Because that immediately liberates you from sansara. You may be in your job, in your family, whatever you're doing it. But if our minds can be kind of reprogrammed, if we can discard all the old files and you put in this new operating system where you see that ultimate destination is rightly available before your eyes, you are being able to see that, then all the so-called old entanglements, so many commitments, so many words you have given, so many hopes and expectations you have nurtured, they lose their power and hold over you. And then what? Of course, you have Sadhya Mukhyaha. You can instantly get liberated. These are all, in a way, is trying to praise the mental disentanglement over all other ways of sort of physically dissociating yourself. Because I tell you, wherever we are discussing from the yogic perspective, whatever Bhagavan had advised in Bhagavad Gita, this is taking us a step further, trying to sort of orient ourselves in a very conceptual way towards that foundational truth. Bhagavad Gita steps are still important, that you have to find a proper place and you have to have asana and you sit. But here you'd be twisting everything to make them, these are all physical external things, fine enough, you do that. But do you know what is the essence? The essence is to do with how you think, how you look at reality. So that is how he defines Tyaga. If you look at the commentary, there's a bit of a longish commentary. Just let's look at it. Idanim Trutiyam Tyagam Lakshayati. He's explaining what is Tyaga. Prapancha Rupasya, Prapancha Nama Rupa Lakshanaha. What is Prapancha? Nama and Rupa, names and forms. Rupyate, Ghatoyam, Patoyam, Ityadi Nama Rupa, Nirupyate, Vyabhriyate, Prakasyate Yena, Tat Prapancha Rupam, Sarvadhisthana Bhutam, Padartha Padarthas Purnam Sasya. So you have that fundamental thing because of which everything else they become visible to us. That foundation, that substratum is the Brahman. And then this is the playing out of Prakriti through its manifestation. You have this Trigunatmika Maya and everything is manifesting. Chidatmatva avalokanat chijjadam swata eva prakasamanam brahma. Chidatmatva avalokanat. So, you see everything. the Jada Varga, the Chetana Varga, whatever you see. Hmm? But if you look at that Atma, which is beyond all that, is Swayam Prakasa. We have given examples earlier that you want to see the sun, you are inside a cave. To come out of the cave, you need a torchlight. But once you are in front of the sun, you put the torch on the sun. It's ineffective. It doesn't have any role to play. In the beginning, it has a relevance. The mind cannot capture the Brahman, but we are using our minds to do vichara right now, even about Atman or Brahman. But it is Swayam Prakasha. Ising Swata eva Prakasamanam Brahma. Tadatma Swarupam Yasya Tada Bhavaha Tasya Avalokanam Anusandhanam Tasmad Hetoho Yah Tyagaha. That particular tyaga, when you have this avalokan of the Brahma Tattva, you know that ultimate truth. You have studied the Upanishads. Then the ability to renounce, to kind of lighten up your sense of entanglement. You know, have a sense of lightness, loosen it up a little. The grip of samsara, you try to loosen it. There are two ways. You try to make a lot of mental efforts. The other one is focus on the ultimate truth. Slowly they lose their importance. It's like you are in a, you're sitting in an orchestra and listening to some music, and suddenly you remember that you have an assignment tomorrow. You may be there, you have already started thinking about your assignment, and then the music and everything and the people around, they have no impact on you. Similarly, once we are aware of this Brahma Tattva, the sansar will still be around us, but without having a very strong grip over our mind. And that is how we sort of disentangle ourselves with tattvavolokanam. Then he's saying, Tasmad hetoho yah tyaga, that because of this, the kind of tyaga and renunciation or the letting go, nama rupa apeksha sa eva tyagaha, tyaga sabda vachyaha. So that is the more foundational way of understanding what is renunciation. It's not about physical sanskara, the ritual of running away. Isavasyam idam sarvam, then that is the Isavasya Upanishad. Whatever is moving in the samsara, that is all pervaded by that Atma Tattva. And therefore, you should not crave for anything. The only way to get ultimate happiness is by tatyagena bhunjitha. Then you'll be able to get the juice of this life if you lose interest in whatever is tempting. Because the real juice, the real truth, the real happiness lies in returning to the source of all of it, because of which all these are coming. He iti vidvad anubhava prasiddha. Then he's saying, this is what? Nanu ayam tyago na kutrapi prasiddha ityasankya mahatam puja. If somebody says, but I haven't seen anybody doing this kind of renunciation that you're mentioning, he's saying, no, it's not for everybody. Everybody cannot do this tyaga. It's vidva sannyasa. He's saying mahatam pujaha. It's only few, 1 in a million, who is doing sadhana is being able to practice this sort of renunciation, this sort of letting go. Having a kind of open mind, when you are embracing the divine, then many of these things that surround you, people and relations, they would be there, but you have a sense of lightness. As Thakur used to mention, that the elephant is struggling with flood water in the Ganges. The fish is, loving. I mean, she is swimming upstream, downstream, having fun, not bother about that sense that even though you are trapped in samsara outwardly, inwardly, once you have that Brahma Drishti, you feel the lightness and you feel that freedom from all that is otherwise surrounding you. That is Tyaga he's mentioning. Tatra hetu sadhya mukhya. Yato ayam tyagaha sadhya anusandhana kale eva mukhyamayaha. The moment you think about it, the moment we think about the Atma Tattva, the moment we think about the Brahma Tattva, the sense of lightness starts unfolding in us. That gives you that liberation. Mokshamayaha Paramananda Swarupa Avasthana Rupaha. Then you are in your true self. You think about yourself as a professor, as a CEO, as a manager, as a father, as a husband, as a lover, as a citizen, as a national, as a national of a certain nationality. There are tags and they're binding. Swarupa Avasthanam, the moment we think about ourselves, then your mind is not bothered about anything, whether some news you're watching. So right now it's election time in India, also in US, and there's war going on, and there are certain sports events going on, and you are likely to get entangled. Why is he talking like this? That's not right. This is right. That's false. That should happen. That shouldn't happen. Once you have Swarupa Avasthanam, you might watch, you may not watch. You may lose interest in many of these so called news programs because it's also going to clutter your mind. You're relaxed, whether you're listening to some sweet music, you're reading a book, you're doing your work, you have that feeling of lightness. That is the Tyaga he's talking about. Very beautiful way in which he's mentioned it. How to let go. You're not letting go of anything. You are holding on to yourself. You are rediscovering yourself. You're returning to the higher self. Therefore, all the entanglements which characterize our being at a lower level of our consciousness, very easy to discard. That is all he's mentioning. Then, then there is now talking about Maunam, and couple of verses they will mention, and there are a lot of cross references to the Upanishads by the Tikakara. Let's look at the verse number 107. Yasmad vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha yan maunam yogi virgamyam tad bhave sarvada buddha. Yasmad vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. That is the Upanishadic statement that is mentioning. Maunam lakheti yasmatiti sabda prabhati nimitta jati kriyader abhavat. You see, why we are able to use any word, there has to be some prabhritti nimitta. There should be some reason, some rationale for our being able to use a word to describe something. So, what are these? There has to be either jati, a class of things. This is a horse. These are people. He is a singer. She's a dancer. You see? So either you are, this is red, that is brown. So you are either referring to a guna, a quality, an attribute, or a jati, a class of things, or a particular vyakti. Okay. So these are the prabhritti nimitta. These are the rationale for you to be able to use a word. Why is he making such a profound statement? Because this is about the whole theories of language that we study in Sanskrit. Why a certain word can be used, when it can be used. There has to be some prabhritti nimittaka. So if the prabhritti remains the same, you cannot have two words. It's nirarthaka. You can have same thing being referred to by three, four words, but you would closely look at them, they would be referring to different aspects of the same thing. Otherwise, if you have the same prabhritti nimitta, you have two, three words, then they become fruitless in Sanskrit. But in English or any other language, you can have different etymological roots which are giving result to different words when you are actually referring to the same thing, like in different languages. You can use to the refer to the same thing with different words. By the way, the purpose of mentioning these sayings, sabda prabhritti nimitta jati kriyader. So either any action or any quality or vyakti or all this, jati, kriya, guna, all that. You are rational for describing something. Do they exist in Brahman? Is Brahman having a class of things? Is there a class of Brahmans? Is Sajatya Veda Rahita? You cannot have two Brahmans. Sajatya, Vijatya, Swagata Veda Rahita. That we know. Swagata means part and whole. Brahman is not part or whole. It doesn't have a Brahman and something else. No, Sadeva Brahma Ekdam Agarasit Ekam Eva Dvitiyam. Brahman is only one. So there are no two Brahmans. There is not Brahman and Sansara, Brahman and Maya. That also will have duality. There is something other than Brahman there, so no. So I am Brahmavid. No, you have to be Brahman because Brahmavid and Brahman cannot coexist. That means again there is duality. It has to be only one. So the dhyata, the dhyaya, and the dhyana, sorry, all this will go. What will stay? Pure consciousness. We are not talking about any kind of disjunctions and dualities and discontinuities. Ultimately, it's all pure one thing. then it all appears as different. Yeah, we are giving a lot of examples, like the foam on water, the waves, the big waves, the bubbles, the way they all look different. Ocean is just one. Similarly, the same pure consciousness modifies and appears as different things. Why so? Because of Ajnana, Maya, the magical power through which all these things appear as if they are all different. They are different explanations. Ultimately, it's all one. So also in physics, they talk about this Big Bang theory. What was there before Big Bang? Why did it happen? There are a lot of questions, aren't there? So they're talking about that primordial, undivided, pure field of consciousness. These are words. Ultimately, it's just one thing. So Brahman cannot be described in any words. Why? There is no class of things. There is no action. There is no quality. That means there is no rationale for you to use a word using the same rules of your language and grammar and stuff like that. Therefore, what is he saying? Manobacham agocharam. Either through your words or your mouth. I mean, you cannot even describe it. You can't even think about it. Avang manaso gocharaha. That is the Atma Tattva. Yana maunam. Now you see, mauna that he will refute. What is maunam? Maunam is silence. Gandhi used to practice silence. There are a lot of people who do it. Early morning, I'll not talk. I'll not take any phone calls. So you have some hours of silence. Is a very good practice to have. Like there's a beautiful statement: you are a slave of all that you have said, and you are a master of all that you haven't said. Because if you haven't shown your card to anyone, he doesn't know what you're thinking about. And the moment you speak out, they can find faults. They can hold you accountable for what you have said. So you are a slave of all that you have said, and you are a master of all that you haven't. Silence is great. Unless, I mean, you should, as I say, you should say something only when you are adding value to silence. Otherwise, don't speak. So silence, there are a lot of glory, a lot of beautiful statements and by wise men which glorify silence. The silence is golden. Okay, great. But this Vedantic silence is not a physical act of resisting the tendency to desire to express something, maintaining a presence of the absence of any words. No, it's not that simple. This is again something which is very intellectual, very conceptual, which is talking about a higher level of understanding, which is described as silence. And what is that? Just think about it. Because of a realization that there is nothing to talk about, because you can only talk about whatever is physically available to your eyes, or any qualities or any class of things or any movements, all that you can describe. And all these are essentially the, related to the phenomenal reality, which is not fundamentally real. What is fundamentally real cannot be described in words. See the difference now. One silence is driven by a desire not to speak anything because you want to have a peace of mind or anything. The other one is premised on an inner realization that there is nothing to speak about, because whatever you speak about is going to be about what is available to you to see, to talk about. And these are all phenomenal, therefore not fundamentally real. There is nothing to talk about the Brahman. And therefore, you have an inner silence. How beautiful is that? That is much different from the physical silence. So you may be able to speak a few words. You may be talking to somebody, but you are ever silent within, because here silence is a state of realization that words cannot capture the ultimate truth about existence, which is beyond words which is beyond the mind. That realization is the mother of all silence. You can have political silence or silence on an economic event, and emotional silence. You may avoid somebody. These are all peripheral acting. These are these are peripheral acts, incidences of what we describe as silence. The real silence is a moment of realization. And that realization that we cannot describe reality in words, and therefore it's fruitless to waste words. As Bhagavan says in one of the Upanishads, it says that Nanu Dhyayad Bahun Sastran. Then he's saying what? It's just a wastage of words. Don't get into these karma sastras, karma kandas. This is a wastage of your words. You just get into the inner self, reflect on that inner reality. Therefore, he's saying, Janmaunam bhaktum asakyam yad brahma tathapi yogivi gamyam yana yogivi, which you cannot know through the mind, but you can know through that jnana yoga. But you might see there is an element of contradiction, isn't it? On the one, yan manuna manasana manute, then immediately you're saying that it's only buddhi grahyam. These are contradictions. He's saying, yeah, apparently contradictory. Ultimately, the Atma Tattva is not buddhi grahya. The buddhi process with which you meditate on it, you have brahmakara vritti, but ultimately, when you have this brahma jnana, that becomes jnana swarupa. It's not jnana of Brahma. Then there will be two things, Brahma and jnana, and Brahma jnana, no. That is jnana swarupa. So obviously, yad manasana manute, you cannot meditate. The ultimate thing is beyond meditation on the Brahman. We start with meditation on the Brahman, we do vichara. When the process of meditation matures into a state, it gets dropped. What remains? There is a clear, quiet illumination, appearance, realization of the truth, which is beyond that whole process. So Brahma Jnana is also Mithya. That also gets dropped. Beautifully, it's explained in Advaita Siddhi. It's all Vritti Jnana is an intermediate state. That ultimate Jnana, the Jnana Swarupa, there is no Brahma Jnana, there is no Brahma Jnani. There is only that pure consciousness, that ultimate state. So therefore he's saying what? Yogi vihi pratyak avinnattvena. It's not different from you that you are meditating on it. Pratyak avinnattvena prapyam tat prasiddham eva brahma rupam maunam sarvada buddho viveki bhave. Then that you have that inner. So here it's a very philosophical rendition of the idea of silence. Silence is here a state of wisdom, a state of realization of that ultimate truth, which cannot be described in words, about which you can't give a lecture, you cannot talk about it, and therefore we are talking about that particular thing. And it's a very beautiful verse. And there are a couple of other verses that we will do it, and we'll also look at some Vedantic statements who sort of reiterate what is mentioned here. The verse number 108. वाचो यस्मान् निवर्तन्ते तद्वक्तुं केन शक्यते प्रपञ्चो यदि वक्तव्यः सोऽपि शब्दविवर्जितः वाचो यस्मिन् निवर्तन्ते, because it's beyond your words and therefore you can't describe it. Nanu idam pratyak avinna brahmanusandhanam dhyana rupam chaturdasam angam pratiyate. You're saying, but you are mentioning all the steps to meditate on the Brahman, and then you are saying that Maunam is also beyond words. Iti asankhya swarasyad prakaram tirana Maunam eva lakhyayati sardhena. He's mentioning, this is the half of this verse. Next one, he'll mention more about it. Ayang bhavaha. The commentator says, Sabda prabriti nimitta abhavad. In the Brahman, the rationale for using words don't exist. There is no guna, there is no kriya, there is no vyakti, there is no jati. Brahma yatha vag avishayam. Vag is ability to speak. Avishayam. It's not an object of your articulation. It's not Vishaya of your words. You can't talk about it. We are talking about, there's a pencil. We're talking about it. This is the Vishaya of my words, object of my statement. Brahman cannot be an object of your statements. Vaga Vishayam Tatha Nama Rupa Jatyadi Prapanchopi. Same way. Now this is even more beautiful, more subtle. Let's pay attention to it. What he's trying to say is, okay, I cannot talk about the Brahman. Can I talk about the Prapancha? Can I talk about Sansara? And therefore, because I can talk about Sansara, isn't it important that I restrain myself and practice Maunam? Why are you questioning that old definition of Maunam? He's saying, look at my boy. Once, let's imagine that you had a holy party in India. They take what is called bhang, which is basically marijuana paste or marijuana leaves or whatever, bhang leaves. And they put it in some sarvat and they drink. And then what? You have lots of false thoughts and ideas. You talk about things which don't exist and blah, blah, blah. And just imagine that there are moments that just imagine you had a bit of it and you're watching your own thoughts. You are still in your sense and you are being able to watch your thoughts and all kinds of words. You hear voices and lots of things, your own statements. You hear your old friends speaking, some old memory, all kinds of hodgepodge things happens. At that moment, do you consider any of these as real? Because you are becoming a kind of inner silent, you're quietly sitting and you're saying all these are happening. Before you lose out or you pass out, you're sitting and you're watching all these things are happening to you. You are no more in a mood to describe them or consider them real because you know this is happening because you have taken a kind of sedative or you've taken some medicine. Similarly, when you have high fever, that you must have experienced. So you have a very schizophrenic state. You have a lot of thoughts and this and that because of the health condition. So your mind is kind of experiencing all kinds of weird thoughts, weird mental experiences. You are lying on your bed and you have high temperature. You just remember those events. And in that moment, all the thoughts which are coming, you know I'm not well, so all these thoughts are coming. But you are not accepting them as real, and you are not, whatever your mind is describing or doing, this is all fruitless. You know this. You're just not well, you want rest. All these thoughts are coming, they're kind of invading you. You don't have any control over them, but you're watching them because of a physical condition. You're not well. Yasma nivartate tadbhuktum kena sakyati, in saying, but can you even describe sansara? Is the sansara different from the Brahman? This is only a phenomenal playing out of Prakriti. Once you have that inner knowledge, you will also lose interest in describing the samsara. Like you lose interest in describing whatever is happening to you because of a physical condition. He's saying, Prapancho yadi vaktabhya sopi sabda vivarjitaha. He's saying, ang bhavaha. So he's saying, sabda praprati, okay, he's saying, tatha nama rupa jatyadi prapanchopi sadasad sad sadadi vikalpa asahatvad vagatitaha, because it is anirvachaniya maya. It's neither true nor untrue. We have given that example several times. Let's return to it. What is that snake that you see on the rope? You are seeing a snake, so you cannot say that you didn't see anything. It's not unreal because you are seeing it. There's something, you are seeing something. And then you, after some time, you realize it's not a snake, it's a rope. So it's not real, it's not unreal, and it's not both. So what is it? It's anirvachaniya. So you cannot describe it in words. Saying the way the Brahman is avachya, and the Maya prapancha is anirvachaniya. Avachya beyond words. And the sansar and everything, you may describe it in words, but there is an element of uncertainty and transience. It's here and it's not here. It's here now. In 2 seconds, it's not going to be there. The moment, the way it appears, it's not also there. So you are kind of confounded with that situation. Therefore, he's saying ultimately, Vacho yasman nivartante tadvaktum kena sakyate. Who can describe that? Brahman cannot be described. Prapancho yadi vaktabhya. And if you think that you can describe the prapancha and therefore you can have words, and therefore let's define maunam as a state of restraining yourself, don't at all get enamored by this sort of a premise. Because even if you're wise, if you're a little wise, you'll realize even prapancha cannot be described. Again, the secret here is, irrespective of whatever words you're using, remaining free and disentangled is the key in this Vedantic way of dealing with everything we are doing. You'd be doing everything, but then you have that inner peace, you have that inner unity of who you are. You're kind of integrated within, and you have that state of maunam, because whatever outward use of words, they are at their own place, and then you have that inner silence that you have in experience. Next verse, a further elaboration of this point. Iti va tad bhaven maunam satam sahaja sanjitam gira maunam tu balanam prayuktam brahmavadivi. Iti va tad bhavet maunam. Then he's explaining satam sahaja sanjitam. That sahaja bhava. The beautiful example one I remembers is that Nigamananda Saraswati, when he went to Jagannath Puri, was living there. He was a sannyasi. But apparently in Puri, he was wearing very lovely silk dhotis and kurtas and used to go to temple. And a lot of people used to think that he's a jamidar because he loved yasmin, garlands, and he would be chewing pans and going to the temple. And then, he lived like a very normal aristocratic person. He was not at all involved in anything. He was happy to talk to people. He was very warm. Nobody knew that he's a sannyasi. People knew he's a great guru, but if anyone doesn't know him, he's walking to the temple or he is walking on the sea beach, what do they know about him? And they think that, yeah, he's one of these Bengali jamidars who is having a holiday here. He was in that sahaja state. He was very normal with everybody. But you know what? As they put it in English, he was kind of internally sorted out. He was perfect. There was nothing to be achieved. He was completely sorted out. So many of these self-realized souls, they have no rules and regulations. They're very comfortable with a lot of people. During sadhana kala, you have a lot of rules and regulations. This guy is a gambler. I don't want to let him get into my ashram. And what about Thakur? Thakur used to send one of his devotees. When you have this Girish Chandra who used to come to him, sometimes he would be drunk. He was a great devotee of Ramakrishna. He was a great devotee of Ma Kali. And he was into theater. He was a creative person. And when he's going, he'll be sort of, not even steady when he was walking. So Thakur would send one of his young boys, keep an eye that he's being able to, get into that, whatever it was, a horse-pulled cart or it was a rickshaw or it's a car. Keep an eye so he doesn't fall down. Keep an eye how he goes back. But he was happy to entertain him. He had no problems. He could entertain people from any background. He never said, you can't come to me. They were in that sahaja bhava. That's what he's mentioning here. Itiva yad bhavat maunam satam sahaja sanjitam. That is another definition. He has given three. One is that completely pure Vedantic high level of maunam, which is completely a kind of wisdom oriented understanding, because you cannot anymore describe either the phenomenal reality fruitfully with any benefit to yourself, or dare to waste your time describing the Brahman, because it's not to be captured with words, through words. So you practice maunam. One definition. Second one is saying, otherwise, let's look at it that you are in a state of effortless comfort because you are sorted out with this thing that we described just earlier. That neither can you describe the Brahman nor the samsara, but you continue to interact with others. That is the sahaja bhava, sahaja sanjitam. It could also be described as maunam. Then he gives you the normal preliminary definition. Gira maunam tu balanam. Gira, through the words. Silence through a physical effort by not speaking out words. Gira maunam, verbal silence. To Balanam. Balan is not about children. It's for the early stages of sadhana where we have to practice some silence. Gira maunam tu Balanam. Prayuktam Brahmavadibhihi. The real adepts at Brahma Jnana, the sadhana, Jnana Yoga, the preceptors of Vedanta, the preceptors are verily mentioned that physical silence, verbal silence is useful, if at all, at a very preliminary stage for the students. They should practice. That is what is mentioned in the verse number. That is mentioning in the verse number 108. Now let's look at it. There are a few interesting, you know, uh, beautiful cross references in the Upanishads, and I would just like to refer to that. So when you are doing this nididhyasana, so you are alert and you are being able to meditate on this. So there we are talking about the mauna, and he's saying what yato vacha nivartante aprapya manasasaha. So there are a lot of cross references. Now, if you look at the Mandukya Upanishad, the verse number 12, what does it say? Amatras chaturtho abhyavaharyaha prapanchopasamaha siva dvaitam dvaita evankaraha atmeva sambisanti atmanatmanam yang evam veda. That particular fourth stage, you have Jagrat, Swapna, and Susupti, or Uma in the Omkara. The fourth stage is Amatraha. Some people say Arthamatra. If you ring a bell in a temple, once the sound recedes, you have that vibration continuing, which not audible. These are certain examples which are given. Amatraha chaturtha avyavaharyaha. You can't make use of it. There is no arthakriyakaritva. It's incomprehensible. It's beyond our senses. Saying prapanchopasamaha, cessation of all phenomenal realities there. And then what is that? Shivodvaitaha. That is that stage, Kalyanakari. Shivaha, Advaitaha, Evam Onkara. And that Onkara is Atma Eva. And what happens is, the one who knows this is Lord. Sambisanti Atmanatmanam Ya Evang Veda. The one who knows the Atma is this, then with the help of his Buddhi Atmana, through his own Jnana Yoga and Prakriya, he is Atmanam. He knows the self. First you start with this duality. You are the knower. There is an object of knowledge, and you are doing sadhana, and ultimately you get rid of all these dualities and you are established, and you become Shiva Dvaitaha Evam Onkaraha. You get dissolved in. Similarly, in the Mundaka Upanishad, chapter 1:16, Yat tad adreshyam agrahyam agotram avarnam achakshu sotram tad apanipadam yat tad adeshyam, that Atma. Why you can't hold it with words? Mundaka Upanishad says, Yat tad adreshyam. Now, you cannot see it. Agrahyam, you cannot hold it. Agotram, there's not a class of things. There are no attributes. Avarnam, no color, nothing. Achakshu sotram, neither can you see nor can you hear this. Tad apani padam, and all karmendriya virodha. Apani padam. It doesn't have hands, it doesn't have legs. You look at Lord Jagannath. Apani padam. So there is Vedantic wisdom behind this whole iconography of Lord Jagannath. Because he can move anywhere, he doesn't have legs. That's what mentions about Brahman in the Upanishads. Apada pani yavano grahita. So he can accept, he receives your bhakti, he gives you papa punya phala also. He doesn't have hands. Lord Jagannath doesn't have any hands. He doesn't have eyes. He doesn't have any eyes to close or open. He doesn't have any ears. Lord Jagannath doesn't have any ears. They put some ornament on special days. No ears. So he can hear, he can see, he can move. But actually, he has none of these attributes which are applicable in case of a human being. That is why it's called Daru Brahma, because that iconography, you look at this whole deity, there is a deep Upanishadic wisdom behind it. So he's saying Evam Onkara Atma Eva. So he's saying Sotram Tad Apani Padam, the Brahman is without hands and legs. And what it is like? Nityam Bibhum. It's Nitya. All the time there. Bibhum. It's not physical, it's non-physical, it's non-local. Sarvagatam, all pervading. Susukshmam. It's extremely subtle, subtler than the subtlest. Susukshmam Tad Avyayam. Na Vyatiti Avyayam. There is no loss of it. Punnamidam, Punnamadaha, Punnamidam. It's always full. And he's saying Avyam. Tad Bhuta Yonim. And it's the cause. Yoni is cause. A lot of people misinterpret it in the Western countries because they have only one interpretation of what is Linga and what is Yoni. Linga means what? Linam Artham Prakasayatiti Lingam. It's a Sanketa. It's a symbol through which you unravel the meaning of a sentence or a word actually in the linguistics in Sanskrit. But for them, it's all fallacy, and that's not a problem. The Brahma Lingam, the Shiva is Brahma Lingam, the Shiva Lingam, because that signifies what is signified the Brahman. This is a sign. That is how you understand it. But anyway, they like the phallus worship that. No, not a problem. And tad avyam, tad bhuta yonim, vishwa yonim, that is Bhagavan Vishnu. Tad bhuta yonim, paripashyanti dhiraha. And the wise ones, they see this. See, there's a contradiction. Achakshu, asrotram, he sent paripashyanti, then they see. The second pashyati means they see. See is know, realize. Asaryavat pashyati, and in Bhagavad Gita we did that. Vision, knowing in that sense. Similarly, in Kathopanishad, there is another example. Verse number 15. 1, 3, 15. And what is it? And what is that Brahman? There is a beautiful way in which it's described. Asabdam, asparsham, arupam, abhyayam. It's beyond words. You cannot touch it. It's asabdam, so you can't hear it. Asparsham, so you can't feel it through your tvagendriya. Arupam, you cannot see it through your eyes. Abhyayam, there is no byaya in that. Tatha, arasam, you can't taste it. Nityam, agandhavat, and it's nitya, it's eternal. Agandhavat means you can't smell it because it has no smell. Agandhavacha yat anadyanantam mahataha param. Anadi and ananta. And mahataha param is beyond, greater than the greatest. Dhruvam is completely one. There is no difference. There is no change. Nichaya tan mrutyum. Tan mrityu sukhat pramuchyate. Then mrityu mukhat pramuchyate. The one who realizes it like that shall be free from the bondage of birth and death. He escapes the jaws of death. That is what is mentioned. Okay? And then we have hit the timeline. We will look at it and we'll take it forward. Tomorrow is Deepavali, so I wish happy Diwali to all of you. But it'll be difficult to hold the class because you would like to celebrate it with your children, family members. So we would again reconnect on the Thursday. Now we can do the Shanti mantras. Om Purnamadaha
Purnamudachyate
Purnasya
Purnamadaaya
Tameva
Vasishyate
Om
Om
Shanti
Shanti
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Okay, so have a good Diwali and we'll again join on Thursday.
Pranam.